George R.R. Martin's criticisms of House of the Dragon, in a swiftly deleted blog post, caused a stir last year following the semi-backlash to Season 2. The author's criticisms covered various parts of the season, but in particular honed in on the changes House of the Dragon made to Blood and Cheese and, in particular, the omission of Prince Maelor Targaryen, the third child of King Aegon II Targaryen and Queen Helena Targaryen. Now, House of the Dragon showrunner Ryan Condal has responded to Martin's criticisms. In his response, he's understandably disappointed by the comments and discusses the involvement of the Fire and Blood scribe in working on the show. There's a promise that everything is thought through and a suggestion that House of the Dragon Season 3 has a plan for it, which is great to hear, but admittedly I'm left more confused by those changes now than I was before. Why House of the Dragon cut Prince Maelor Targaryen? Showrunner Ryan Condal has explained it. Blood and Cheese threatening the young Targaryen princes. In his response to Martin's comments, Condal talks about his working relationship with the author and that, at some point, things reached a point where the author wouldn't accept certain changes to his work. In a lot of ways, that's absolutely fair. Any adaptation is going to have to make changes and, as Condal rightly touches on, Fire and Blood is not a straightforward book to turn into a TV show. Most of the story points and character arcs need fleshing out, something the show has, for the most part, done a reasonable job with. Similarly, there are going to be constraints, be they budgetary or time, which would fit with the practical issues mentioned, that will always have an impact. But House of the Dragon's changes to Blood and Cheese, and the omission of Maelor, don't seem to have those specific issues, outside needing another child actor in the mix, which isn't something the show has struggled with. Condal has previously talked about changing Blood and Cheese, and cutting Maelor, saying, not wanting to recast actors too much and compressing the timeline is understandable to a point, but it didn't need to necessitate cutting Maelor entirely when there were other options on the table, such as slightly extending the time jump between Season 1, Episodes 7 and 8, and introducing Aegon and Helena's youngest child then, since that's when the others were brought in. Plus, a big reason behind it was to do with Helena, so it was seemingly equally a story and character-driven decision as much as anything else. Prince Maelor's absence hurt House of the Dragon. Season 3 is also at risk of suffering from the change. The comments of Condal, and indeed Martin's own complaints, wouldn't matter as much if Blood and Cheese itself had been a great event. This was one of the most anticipated scenes of the entire show, and whether that level of pressure on it was fair or not, it did underwhelm. That's because of a variety of storytelling decisions, such as the ambiguity around what Daemon Targaryen told them, and ending things with Helena walking in on Alicent Hightower and Criston Cole, but the primary issues lie with Helena and Morella. It is absolutely correct that the moment should have been a visceral one for Helena, where we feel her torment and the pain of that choice. But by removing Maelor, not to mention making Helena so distant and unknowable, despite Fire Sabin's strong performance, it actively worked against that. The cruelty of Helena choosing Maelor, and then Blood and Cheese killing Jaehaerys instead, is what makes the scene so emotionally devastating and memorable, and that was lost in the adaptation. Story decisions can backfire, of course, it's part of making art, but then they can also be justly criticized, and putting it down to practical issues, in this case, doesn't quite work. This is going to be a problem the show faces in Season 3, too. In his blog post, Martin referenced the butterfly effect cutting Maelor would have, and that, as it stands, remains true. If Maelor never appears, it removes his own horrific death scene. It changes Aemon's position as heir to the Iron Throne. And, worst of all, is that it has a clear and tangible impact on the rest of Helena's arc leading through to her death. Once again, the risk here is robbing us of what should be among the most emotional moments of the story. Can House of the Dragon Season 3 still include Maelor? It's still possible to introduce him, but harder to do so now. Helena Targaryen, Fire Sabin, looking at her mother Alicent with apprehension in House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 3 image via Max. I very much want to give House of the Dragon the benefit of the doubt. It's a show that, for the most part, I think is very good, and at times great. I don't agree with a lot of the criticisms of Season 2's pacing, and generally think it got a bit of an unfair rep for some of its decisions, most of which are understandable. But the changes to Blood and Cheese, and what spins out of them, are still very difficult to understand. Condal does seem confident in the decision and how it's going to play out, which is good to hear. Will that mean including Maelor in the show? It is possible that Helena became pregnant after Blood and Cheese, or was even pregnant during it, but that's a relatively short window. After it happens, she and Aegon can barely look at each other, and then it's not much longer before he's burned to a crisp. He even notes that a certain part of him burst in the flames like a sausage on a spit. So, yes, it's theoretically possible Maelor will be around in Season 3, but it's harder to pull that off at this point than it would have been by simply having him born in Season 1. And while Mailer's death is horrific in the book, it's going to be much harder, if not impossible, to do that story with a baby. If Mailer isn't in Season 3, the thing I really hope it is able to focus on and better address when it comes to this is our understanding of Helena. Giving her dragon dreams, and perhaps even greater powers, is a cool twist, but it's come at the expense of knowing her. She's become too much like Bran, where we're not really able to comprehend her because she is so distant from it all. That has to change in some way in House of the Dragon Season 3, with or without Mailer, for her biggest moments to land the way they ought to. If it does that, and that story and her arc works as tragically and powerfully as it should, then it may still be possible to justify changing blood and cheese. But if it doesn't, then that's going to look even worse in hindsight, and Martin could be proved right.